When it comes to the larger perspective on what's happening around the world today, has diplomacy, Western diplomacy particularly so, failed us, given that we're looking at wars and nobody is adhering to that very rules-based order that you're talking about? Is the world really sleepwalking into another world war?
Well, I hope not. I mean, that's what we need to try to prevent. So what we've seen after the end of the Cold War was local conflicts, many of them. I mean, you've had some of them, we've had them all around the world. Now we're seeing more regional conflicts, like we're seeing in West Asia and with Iran, for instance. And what we try to do is to prevent it from spilling over to a global conflict.
In terms of just how President Trump has behaved with Europe and European leaders, how do you see that? How do you see the reading? Were you shocked? I mean, of course, all European leaders and Europe was shocked. But how do you see the treatment itself?
Well, I'm very pragmatic. So I've had the opportunity to spend quite a lot of time with President Trump. I don't want to inflate my role because, as we know, President Trump consults but then makes his own mind, as we have seen, whether it's in Venezuela or whether it's now with Iran.
The world is going through perhaps its most troublesome phase in decades. Turbulent times, wars in Europe, wars in West Asia, energy crisis, aviation security issues, and in midst of all of this, India and Europe are trying to chart out a new course. They're reworking their strategic partnership. And with us on this India Today World Exclusive is the President of Finland. Welcome, Dr. Alexander Stubb.
Thank you very much.
Well, he is with us and he'll be speaking to us on a number of issues. The world is under stress. NATO faces existential threat. And this is a time when the world is being challenged on multipolar alliances as also rules-based order. Mr. President, thank you so much for joining us.
You've been a very strong advocate of rules-based order. But considering what we see at the Caribbean sometimes back and now in West Asia, isn't rules-based order being challenged so extensively?
Well, yes and no. I think the rules-based order was created pretty much 80 years ago, and right now it's under stress and strain. And you kind of have two schools of thoughts on this. One group says that it's a rupture, the old order is dead. And then there's another school to which I belong, which says, no, it's in transition. It's actually served us quite well over 80 years. What we need to do in order to maintain the UN, the WTO, the IMF, the World Bank, is to give more agency and power to the global south. That's how we fix it.
Okay, but when it comes to the larger perspective on what's happening around the world today, has diplomacy, Western diplomacy particularly so, failed us, given that we're looking at wars and nobody is adhering to that very rules-based order that you're talking about? Is the world really sleepwalking into another world war?
Well, I hope not. I mean, that's what we need to try to prevent. So what we've seen after the end of the Cold War was local conflicts, many of them. I mean, you've had some of them, we've had them all around the world. Now we're seeing more regional conflicts, like we're seeing in West Asia and with Iran, for instance. And what we try to do is to prevent it from spilling over to a global conflict. Now, two things to keep in mind. When we have rules and institutions and a framework, then we usually contain it. But the other point is to say that just because someone is breaking the rules doesn't mean that the system is null and void. I'll just give you one example. If someone gets a speeding ticket, it doesn't mean that the speed limits are a bad thing. So we need to continue to abide by them.
But if that car is being crushed for speeding, take for example what's happening right now. A head of state is abducted in the middle of the night. Another head of a country is decapitated and there are missiles flying. All of this at a time when negotiations were going on, and the foreign minister, in case of Iran, the foreign minister of Oman said almost everything had been agreed to. So are we now looking at the law of the jungle and not the United Nations, no rules, might is right?
Unfortunately, we're seeing more of that. That is why I'm such a strong advocate of multilateralism and order. If there's a car crash, I hope the car has not crashed so badly that we can't fix it and repair it. So my idea is that you kind of have two options. They're fairly binary. One is a multipolar world, which is about transactions and deals and spheres of interest. That's what we're seeing right now, that, you know, the deals are sort of more bilateral than anything else. And then the other option is a multilateral world, where you have institutions, rules and norms and cooperation. Now, my argument is that it's countries like India that will decide the direction in which the world is going to tilt. And if we want to maintain the multilateral order, and by we I mean the global West, then we need to give more agency and power to countries like India. That's why I, for instance, have advocated a permanent seat in the UN Security Council for India, because then that would keep India promoting multilateralism rather than multipolarity.
President Sir, we will talk about that, because this is a very important part of inclusivity, global inclusivity, and India is an important partner and a key stakeholder. But having said that, coming back to Iran, do you think, in your appreciation, do you think that the world, that America, Israel, did they game the war right? Because we are not looking at a quick in and out over here. It is going to lead to a massive economic crisis. Now, you don't have Russian oil. India has been asked not to buy Russian oil and gas. The Strait of Hormuz and Bandar Bab al-Mandab, the straits are going to be shut. So how will then the world survive?
Well, we'll survive. You know, my favorite saying is that if you don't know how things are going to turn out, assume that they will turn out good. I still believe in the rationality of mankind to be able to find solutions to complex problems. But I think the analysis that you give is the correct one. And I think what happens is that when we don't have common rules and we don't do things together like we have in the UN, there's a power vacuum that emerges. And when a power vacuum emerges, someone is going to fill it. You know, if someone would have told me just a week ago that do I expect 11 countries to be hit in what you call West Asia by missiles, I would have said, no, I don't think so. I think we should find a negotiation track. And I had actually spoken with some of the negotiators previously, so I felt that would be the case. But now we are where we are. And I just spoke today with the President of the United Arab Emirates, Sheikh Mohammed, and we went through some of the pressing issues. And now what we need to try to do is to de-escalate, calm things down. But it is quite difficult. I personally believe that Iran made a strategic mistake by attacking the Gulf states. They should not have done that, because now the Gulf states are going to rally around the flag together and see what they can do with Iran.
But Iran had forewarned. They had said, if we are hit, we will go after, we will expand this entire war, because there is no other way. They have their back to the wall. There is no other option for Iran. How do you see then US and Israel carrying out the strikes in the first place when negotiations were underway?
Well, it's difficult to say. You see, I come from Finland. I have 1,340 kilometers of border with Russia. So my main concern from a security perspective is what's going on in Ukraine. So I can't say I'm an expert. But, you know, if I listen to experts, you know, why did this attack take place? Usually there are four arguments. You know, one is nuclear weapons. Second one is missiles. Third one is proxies, so terrorist organizations such as Hamas, the Houthis, and Hezbollah. And then the fourth one is regime change. How this is going to pan out, I don't think anyone knows.
But do you buy any of these arguments, given all the information at your command, that was this reason enough to go in for a strike when negotiations were happening and the world now is facing the brunt all across West Asia and, of course, Asia itself?
In foreign policy, there are things that you can do something about, and then there are things where you can say something. This is an issue where I can't do that much. I can say, I can conduct diplomatic discussions with my colleagues and friends, but as someone obviously who always advocates international law, needless to say, both Iran and then Israel and the United States have worked outside the context of international law, because usually what happens, or framework, usually what happens is if you have these kinds of strikes, you do one of two things. You get a UN mandate, or you have a coalition of the willing. And in this case, it wasn't the case. But now that Iran has attacked the Gulf states, you're starting to see a coalition of the willing emerging. More skin in the game from big countries in Europe like France and the UK.
In this situation, do you think the Russia-Ukraine war, the focus on Russia won't be as much, because resources that could have gone to Ukraine or should have been used in that conflict will now be diverted to West Asia?
Well, I think two of the things that Ukraine has needed from the beginning and continues to need. One is air defense, and of course we're seeing a lot of the air defense now in this part of the world. And the second one is missiles, both of which are needed. But we have to understand that Ukraine is in a much better position than they were a year ago. On the battlefield, I hate to use these numbers, but over 90,000 Russian soldiers dead in 3 months. They're not able to recruit as many as they lose on the battlefield. Last month, Ukraine gained more territory back than Russia gained. I was in Kyiv on the anniversary of the war on the 24th of February, showing my strong support for President Zelensky and the Ukrainian people. They are in a much better place. And you have to understand that, I come from a country which understands what's going on, because the Soviets attacked us in the Winter War and the War of Continuation, so there's a strong affinity. And I'll be very frank with you, Finland would have never joined NATO had Russia not attacked Ukraine. So these are big things in our region, and the important thing is that we understand each other and what's going on.
But you did join the NATO.
Yes, definitely.
And now we see a very fragmented, disrupted, almost broken NATO in such...
I disagree fundamentally, but go ahead.
Is NATO really not facing an existential crisis
No,
here?
not at all. We're seeing the birth of NATO 3.0.
Sans America. Sans America, without America.
No, I don't think so. I think the United States is now shifting the burden when it comes to conventional warfare. And that's what we're doing. That's why we're increasing our defense expenditure to 5%. That's why Finland joined. That's why Sweden joined. So you had one of the most substantive armies in Europe. We have 1 million men and women that have done military service. We have 280,000 that we can mobilize at wartime. We have over 60 F-18s. We just bought 64 F-35s. So, and the list goes on. We have the biggest artillery in Europe together with Poland. And as I always say, we don't have them because we're worried about Sweden. We have them because we're worried about Russia. So what we're seeing is a rejuvenation of NATO and a burden shifting on the conventional side, but then the nuclear umbrella will still stay with the United States. So I'm not worried about the future of NATO at all. Quite the contrary. I think it was a strategic mistake by Russia to attack Ukraine because it strengthened NATO.
But then it's gained more territory. And I mean, let me just give you the other side of the story. Both Geeta and I were in Ukraine when the war started, and we covered it both 2022, 2023. They've lost about 20% of their country. They've lost a large number of people. Economy is in tailspin. In all of this, does NATO have the stomach to continue supporting Ukraine at a time when America is engaged here? And would China be the ultimate gainer in all of this? Because a lot of resources are being spent either in Ukraine or in West Asia.
Well, if we start from the territory issue, remember that the war actually began 12 years ago in 2014 when Russia, against international law, annexed the Crimean Peninsula. So within the first few days of the war with green men and women, they gained 12%. In the past 12 years, they have gained 8%. In the past 2 years, they have gained 1%. That means that they're only advancing a few meters per day at a cost of human life, which to me is mind-boggling. And in some days, actually, what is happening is that for one Ukrainian dead soldier, there are 25 dead Russian soldiers. And as far as economy is concerned, I'm not worried about Ukraine. It just got a 90 billion euro loan from Europe. NATO is not involved, but the member states of NATO, like Finland, like Norway, like Denmark, are supporting Ukraine a lot. The economic problem is actually with Russia. Zero growth, zero reserves, interest rates of 16%, inflation double digits, and on top of that, a potential bank crisis. So I think the person who is more worried right now is President Putin. And if I may be very direct, what's going to happen is that Russia is not going to win this war, but it's virtually impossible for them to forge a peace because they know that they will look bad.
But in all of this, President, sir, the fact is that at the end of the day, it has to come to the negotiating table. The question is very simple. Will Ukraine have to cede territory? Will that be the end of the political life of the Ukrainian president? And we're looking at a very changed world order where you have a president in the United States of America who doesn't see Russia as an enemy, as a foe.
Yeah. So as far as territory is concerned, and you'll understand as a Finn, I take this very seriously because we lost 10% of our territory in World War II, including the areas where my grandparents and my father was born. But that was a peace settlement where we call it a defense victory for us. But basically, we were the losing party in the war. We lost the land and had a lot of other restrictions. What's going to happen, I think, in a peace agreement, and I'm in close contact with both the Americans and Ukrainians. I talked to the main negotiators on both sides on Friday. What's going to happen is that there might be a deal about territory 20%. But for us, that is not de jure, so it's not a lawful annexation of territory. So it will be de facto, and there's a big difference. So Finland conceded territory in World War II, but Ukraine will not concede territory. So it's a truce, it's an armistice. And what will Ukraine get in return? It will get membership in the European Union. It will get security guarantees from the United States and from Europe. It will get one of the biggest reconstruction packages that we've seen in modern post-war history. So they will be quite well off if a deal is forged. We don't know.
What is the likelihood of this deal being forged? Because that's a very big thing that you're saying. Is President Zelensky on board losing 20% of territory?
He's not losing.
No, so Finlandization is technically not happening?
No. So, I mean, let me be very clear on this. This is not a legal abdication of territory. That will never happen. You will get zero European state recognizing the illegal annexation of territory in Ukraine. So we don't know what it's going to end, but the framework of the negotiations, everyone knows it, is three basic documents. One is a 20-point plan. That includes the territory question and the settlement, especially on Donetsk. The President Zelensky has spoken about it. We don't know whether it will go to a referendum or not. We don't know whether the Ukrainians will accept it or not. The second document is security guarantees from the US and Europe, and the third document is a reconstruction plan. So this is the package that they're working on. But I think, actually, that the Ukrainians are more willing to accept a peace deal than the Russians.
Wow. That's a significant statement, President Sir. But before we come to the Trump question, I have to circle back to oil.
Sure.
Because this is a crisis that faces not just India today, it faces Europe. You're not willing to, or you're looking at zero to very little Russian oil and gas.
Zero.
But in this scenario, there are some countries who still buy.
Hungary, but...
Yes. But in this scenario, when you will have a real oil crunch, why should India then again be looked at as a country who should not be buying oil and gas from Russia? And can Europe then survive without Russian oil?
Okay. I come from a country of 5.6 million people. You're a country of almost 1.5 billion people. So I am not going to give you advice on what you buy and how you build your society. The starting point, of course, is number one, that we are looking at an increase in oil prices because of the situation in Iran. And what we have done in Europe is to wane ourselves off of Russian gas and Russian oil. Yes, there's still Slovakia, and yes, there's still Hungary, but the rest of us are basically out of the business. And what then happened was that this gave an opportunity for India to buy cheap oil. And you work in your self-interest. I'm not going to give you a moral high ground on what you do or not. But for me, coming from Finland, it is extremely important that we continue sanctions, that we especially quench the shadow fleet, which are distributing the oil basically illegally and with a lot of environmental risk in the package. But you take your sovereign decisions on what you see best fit in your relationship with the United States, in your relationship with Russia, in your relationship with China. it's extremely complex, and we'll just see how the next few weeks pan out.
On the issue of NATO being very strong and NATO being united and NATO 3.0, when it comes to the issue of Greenland, does all of it still remain the same if President Trump still wants it? Or as a golfing partner, you can get him off Greenland while playing a game of golf?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the best way to frame it is that Davos, the World Economic Forum, wasn't exactly a highlight of transatlantic partnerships. But Munich, where we had security conference, it was better. So on the Greenland issue, you'll understand me coming from a Nordic country and being an Arctic state. It's a red line. You know, it is about the independence, sovereignty, and territorial integrity of a NATO member, the Kingdom of Denmark. And as always in diplomacy, you have to find solutions. And we were looking at the good, the bad, and the ugly in Davos. The good was to get an off-ramp and abolish the tariff issues and put a process. The bad one was an increase of tariffs. I mean, I don't need to tell you what it means in your relationship with the U.S. And then the third one was a continued military threat. We were able to take option or scenario 2 and 3 off the table, and now we have a double process. One is with Greenland, the United States, and the Kingdom of Denmark having a conversation about Greenland. And the second one is about Arctic security and within the NATO framework. So we're working on both of those. But yes, I've said it publicly as well. It was an uncomfortable moment for an avid transatlanticist like myself.
But in terms of just how President Trump has behaved with Europe and European leaders, how do you see that? How do you see the reading? Were you shocked? I mean, of course, all European leaders and Europe was shocked. But how do you see the treatment itself?
Well, I'm very pragmatic. So I've had the opportunity to spend quite a lot of time with President Trump. I don't want to inflate my role because, as we know, President Trump consults but then makes his own mind, as we have seen, whether it's in Venezuela or whether it's now with Iran. So my take is that don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, be pragmatic. So what are the issues where we still continue to work with the Trump administration and with America? It's NATO. It's defense. We just bought 64 F-35s. It can be technology, quantum computing. We just sold 11 icebreakers to the United States. If India is interested, we have really good icebreakers. So, be pragmatic about the relationship and understand that President Trump is a deal maker. So he sort of parks values aside. And he looks, and alliances sometimes aside, and looks more at the deal side. And then be honest and open about where you disagree. We disagree on climate change. We disagree on the European Union. I'm an EU nerd, and I support it very strongly. We disagree on global institutions. We disagree on tariffs. But have that conversation, mostly probably privately than publicly. So you have to work with America.
So you work better with him on the golf course? Is that the real icebreaker?
Are you the real icebreaker?
No, not the real icebreaker. But we also have to understand that, as we started this conversation about the changing world order, it started, in my mind, with Russia's attack on Ukraine on the 24th of February 2022, but it has now been accelerated with the new American administration. And they have two guidelines, and you can find them in their national security strategy. One is MAGA, so that's, anti-globalist, anti-Europe, anti-liberal. That's ideological. The second one is America First, and there they have a pecking order. They say it directly in the strategy. Number 1 is the Western Hemisphere. Number 2 is the Indo-Pacific. Number 3 is Europe. Number 4 is the Middle East, and number 5 is Africa. That is the reality. So deal with the world as it is, not as you would wish it to be.
But isn't the Indo-Pacific, as of now, in your view, also taking a backseat? It's on the back burner as far as whatever is happening. I mean, they may want Indo-Pacific. They may look at China as a challenge, but
they're really not focused on Quad. Something as important as Quad.
I am not going to be giving the view of the President of the United States. That is what they say in their strategy. But I think there are some similar elements. Basically, the message quite often with America First is take care of yourself. Take more responsibility yourself. So that's why Europeans are now hiking up their defense expenditure. And that's probably the similar type of messages that you get in this part of the world. Quad would be super important. I think it's one of the most important alliances.
Okay, you're in New Delhi and for a very important visit, a very important event as well. Just talking about what you think Finland can bring to the table when it comes to engagement, when it comes to business, when it comes to digital transformation and partnership. Finland has been way ahead when it comes to digital technology, startups. What is it that you have to offer and what do you come with?
Well, probably, we come with two offerings. One is about diplomacy, engagement, the basic argument that it's countries like India that are going to decide what the next world order looks like. And having that, dignified foreign policy and a conversation about where we go, with Prime Minister Modi, with Foreign Minister Jai Shankar at the Raisina dialogues and the rest of it. And the second side is, of course, business. We have a business delegation of 20-ish big Finnish companies. We're going to be here in Delhi and Mumbai. And what can the Finns give? You will all remember Nokia phones, of course, but you probably don't know that most of the networks that you have here right now are run by Nokia. So 5G, hopefully future 6G. So you can complain to Nokia if the reception is bad. We are very strong in quantum computing, and for some people it sounds like a strange language, but it's basically the stuff that drives artificial intelligence. Without quantum, you're not going to be getting everything out of artificial intelligence. So I would argue that quant is a good one. And then we have a lot of other companies deal with satellites, for instance, which is a super important technology. Actually, one Finnish satellite company run by an Indian and owned by an Indian. So there you go. We're going to have a lot of good conversations.
Now, India and the European Union now have a free trade agreement. But how do you improve business-to-business ties between the two blocks so that it benefits all, and the niggles that are there in the relationship?
I think a good starting point is the free trade agreement. I think it was way too long coming. And what you start seeing globally is that when other countries like the United States fairly randomly increase tariffs, you're going to start seeing money going elsewhere. And this means increased trade relations. So I'm extremely happy that India and the European Union forged a free trade agreement, because for a small country like Finland, which is in the European Union, this is a good news as well.
You're wearing a lovely Indian jacket.
Yes.
It looks awesome on a very auspicious day, Holi. When all of us in late 1990s, we started off with our first Nokia phones. But now, India is very big on Make in India, Atmanirbhar Bharat. Are you looking at more selling of stuff to India, or making in India, or making together?
Probably a combination of all the three. So I know that there was one company that almost had a big sort of plant deal here in India clinched, but it's not there yet, so we're not going to announce it. So it's going to be very much a two-way street. We have a good contingent of Indians in Finland as well, who are very tech-driven. And speaking of made in India, I actually got this waistcoat from Prime Minister Modi, very much made in India, and I brought it back with me from Finland.
All right. And before we conclude, my final question to you as a world leader. You're dealing with leaders from across the world who are very different in their approach, their policy, their pragmatism. How do you see a Trump versus a Xi Jinping versus a Prime Minister Modi? How do you see these leaders and how do you deal with them?
I think all human beings are quite different in public from what they are in private. I come from a small country, which means that it's my job to get along with pretty much 200 heads of state or government around the world. I have a good relationship with President Xi Jinping. I've met him 3 times. We have a respectful dialogue about different issues. I have a good relationship, I would consider, with President Trump. And I hope to be able to have a good relationship with Prime Minister Modi. I've only met him a few times, but tomorrow is a big day for me when I have the chance to spend time with the leader of one of the most important countries in the world right now.
And how is the world looking at India navigating this situation and the role India can play in times to come?
We want leadership. You are the most populated country in the world. You have both demography and economy on your side. And as I will say in my speech tomorrow, Finland is the happiest country in the world, and you are the most optimistic country in the world. for us to combine this happiness and optimism, I think is a big deal. I think the future is very much in India's hands.
I think there you have it. The strongest message coming from you, happiness and optimism combined.
There you go.
Many thanks for joining us here on India Today. Hope you have a great trip. Enjoy what remains of the Festival of Colours, because the Festival of Colours is also the Festival of Hope
And harmony. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much.